how I want to start this podcast is by like sharing some things that I have seen or read or watched that you have shared, and then have you dive into those and into your current work, like from that starting point. And so basically, it's three things. Firstly, your book, it's titled Aftershock to 2030, a CEO's Guide to Reinvention in the Age of AI, Climate, and Societal Collapse. So that's like the first part. Then the second one is a quote that you shared in, I'm not sure if it was in the TEDx that you gave or in an interview, but I think it was a quote by Pope Francis, and it says, "We are not in an era of change. We are in a change of era." So that's the second thing, and then the third thing. This is actually from your TEDx. Was it in 2019 or 2020?
2019, just before COVID.
2019. Okay. So yeah, that's interesting as well, that you have been talking about these changes before that big change, and we can talk about that in a minute. But then this third thing that says things are going to be changing significantly, and when things change significantly, we know that we also need to change significantly. And so these three quotes, these two quotes and the subtitle of your book, they talk about change, right? And transitions in a personal level, but in a personal level that is affected by these big transitions as a society, right? And so your work over the last years has been all about like these ideas, and and how you have been helping organizations adapt to that transition. So yeah, I would like you to dive into this and into like how your work has been.
Let's do it.
Sure. So yeah, I would like you to start by sharing like the story of how you started to get into these topics and into like working with them.
Okay. So how did I get started? I've been thinking about all of this since I was a child, which sounds really strange, but I think we're all able to see how we are where we are today because of some of the decisions or some of the observations or some of the experiences that we had from a very young age. So at a very young age, I was living in Singapore between the ages of 5 and 7, and I could see that society was a very different environment in Singapore. And then when I went back to England at aged 8, I saw a very different, or I didn't really have a good idea about what England was at that time. The most experience I had was how life was led and how life was experienced in Singapore. So when I went to England to live until I was in my 20s, I very much felt like an outsider. I felt that the change that had happened in myself and my sense of reality, my sense of safety, noticing the different environment, the different economy, the different ways of doing things, was just a very different environment. And it was just so different, so profoundly different. We could spend an entire podcast just talking about that, but I don't want to go down that path. So essentially, I went down the line of noticing all of these things, not knowing that I was noticing all of those different things, but then on a lot of reflection. Reflection is very important, as you know, to be able to reflect and understand and to connect the dots and understand my reality, my mindset, my internal operating system, and how I respond to all of those environments, helped me realize that we're all responding in different ways to all of these different environments based on our own operating system in our minds. So it all really started. Everything where I am today all started from the decisions or the observations that I had at a very young age. And then the courses that I took. So, for example, when I was a teenager, I did business and finance course at college, and I immediately wanted to work in marketing. Worked in marketing. I was very interested in technology, and technology from a very young age. I tried to program. I failed abysmally. I did not enjoy programming. So, just realizing very quickly, I do not like programming, but I'm fascinated by technology. I'm fascinated by the different environments that we're in, the different influences that we pick up on automatically or not automatically. There was a lot going on. So fast forward, I was employee number 9 at Sony to launch the PlayStation, and very similar thing. You're observing, you're noticing, you're trying to do what you can do to, make a PlayStation number 1 at that time in 1995, realizing that once I had done it, I needed to change gears because I didn't want to become complacent. I didn't want to be in a situation where I, just went into maintenance mode of, launching all of these games to keep the platform going. I wanted my next big adventure. So I continued down that path for many years, working in technology, or should I say consumer electronics, entertainment, moving into becoming a producer in Australia. So I actually left the UK, moved to Australia, and from that particular moment in time was riding the .com era in 2000, 2001, 2002, and then moved back to the UK. Long story short, I ended up in Vancouver. I changed my career in numerous ways because always looking for a big adventure, my own internal Everest, always wanting to learn, always wanting to grow, always trying to understand all the different environments and challenges that needed to be solved. And ended up realizing through many different ways that really we are our own worst enemy, and often how we interact with people, an organization that might be adapting, the environment or should I say the economy that may not be reacting in the way that we would like it to. We treat them as threats. And when we treat them as threats, we respond in a particular way based on our childhood. So I got to the point where I mushed all of this together. I had decided that I wanted to be further educated at MIT. At MIT, I did 2 certifications, and actually I want to do a third next year if I have time. And the 2 certifications were business in I was about to call it something else, but it's business sustainability, which if you look at ethics and compliance, it's really about the environment, societal and governance, and the kind of compliance that is necessary there. But really thinking about the realities on how our businesses operate in the environment, how it impacts society, how it changes society, and how to walk away from that particular certification with a valid business solution. And then that year, ChatGPT came out, and I immediately put myself onto an AI for business strategy certification course as well, to understand how I could create a business solution for society, which I include in my book. So my book, Aftershock to 2030, CEO's Guide to Reinvention in the Age of AI, Climate and Societal Collapse, is all based on all of these interconnecting systems that are in front of us and we live in and we move through on a day-to-day basis, how we react to it and how we are able to move from the old paradigm into our new paradigm, and to manage that change, because we are all, even me, you have to wake up and sometimes go, Caroline, you need to adapt your thinking here. you need to move forward in a way that isn't related to the old way that I would have moved through or thought through or tried to solve and to move through that. And I would just say one thing is that the one thing I've learned is that when I'm frustrated with something not going how I want it to go, it's usually a sign that I have not adapted to this new paradigm and this new journey that we're all actually facing at exactly the same time.
Do you usually? So you've mentioned that you have this feeling, or not sure if I would call it like maybe even an inner voice that tells you like, no, you need to readapt your paradigm. So you have experienced that and changed that in your work, as you mentioned, with AI or sustainability. But is that something that also happens to you, like on a personal level, for example, like maybe with being emotionally intelligent, or in relationships, how you manage yourself? Is that something that happens to you as well, like in those areas?
100%. 100%, yes. Because, and just last night, I haven't been feeling very well. I was, again, getting frustrated with something. And I was a little bit stunned. I felt like I was in it, and I won't talk about the topic necessarily because it's quite personal, but I felt a little bit stunned, like I was in some kind of stasis mode. And I couldn't work out why I was stuck. I felt stuck. And I felt like I couldn't wriggle my way out of it. And it's because I was thinking in old traditional forms on that particular challenge. And it was about a relationship. It was about my communications in that relationship and why the communications weren't as I wanted them to be. And then I had to go, Caroline, you have to think, you have to build a different paradigm right now on this, and it is on you, as in myself, not the other person, to do the shifting. The moment I become frustrated with the other person not adapting or communicating or responding in a way that is going to be palatable for me, is a sign that I'm not doing the adjusting. They manage their ship, I manage my ship. So, absolutely, I have that on a regular basis. Even this morning, it's only 9:33 a.m. this morning as we record this. And I was in a conversation with my ex-husband, whom I get on really, really well with. And we were on a different topic. And I was able to remind myself of that old paradigm from last night and the paradigm that I needed to be in now for that conversation, to exist and communicate, not get defensive potentially, not reject an idea, to accept it and find a solution in that moment. And a lot of people might say, well, that's an emotionally intelligent way of doing it. And it's like, well, yes, but how often do we actually have that moment where we say, oh, I need to really rethink what is my normal programming in my mind telling me to do? And I write about this in my book, which is, we've all heard of Elon Musk, and Elon Musk has said in the past that we're all running in a simulation. He's kind of right. We are. How we respond to challenges, difficulties, complexities, our communications with people, our loved ones, people that we don't even know, the expectations we have, that is the simulation in our mind. So to be able to stop in our tracks and challenge our own assumptions is the hardest work of our time. Because we're all going to have great opinions about things, or we're going to blame people for things, or blame technology for things. But actually, it's like the flow of lava is happening, whether we like it or not, and how we respond to it is going to be our greatest strength.
Sure. There are different ideas that come to my mind here that I can link to different things that you said. So firstly is, for example, quotes I like by Wayne Dyer. It's something, I'm not sure if it's his quote or maybe he said it, but it was someone else's quote. It was something like the programs we had in the, it was not the morning, but how's that called in English? Like the dawn, when the sun comes up?
Yep, dawn.
Dawn. The programs we have at the dawn of life will not necessarily be the ones that serve us in the afternoon of it, or something like that. And then, so that's the first thing, and that's talking about like the programs and the conditioning we have, like through different stages of life. But then a second thing is like actually that, but on a micro level, because it's like maybe some conditioning that you had yesterday, like literally talking about yesterday, is not the mindset that you need to have for today's challenges. And that's not talking about it as in a poetical way or anything like that. It's literally talking about yesterday or today or maybe 5 hours ago and now. So like the mindset that I had like 6 hours ago to do something at university is different than the mindset I need right now, like to solve things here that I'm right now like recording with you, and then things I'm gonna be doing afterwards. So like that capacity to adapt is something really relevant. And then with that idea, I came to an idea that you mentioned, which is like emotional intelligence. And I also agree that that is something that is like practiced, and as you practice that, you are more able to do that easily. Because I've had, especially this year, like stages where I have not really been practicing being emotionally intelligent, and so when I try to do it, it's like really difficult, and you even feel like some resistance to open your mind and to change your paradigms and things like that. But then there are other stages when I have been more like flexible and emotionally intelligent, and at those times it is easier like to really just be emotionally intelligent in any situation. So I agree with that. And then a thing that came to my mind is talking about like perspectives that we have and how we get fixed to them as we keep on moving in life. Is that I think that as a young person, I see that like young people in general tend to have like more flexibility to what they think, but then as you start getting older, you have like a more fixed mindset, right? And I mean, even many personal development books talk about this, about having a growth mindset versus like a fixed mindset, right? What are your thoughts on that, and on like how paradigms and mindsets stay or shift as we start getting older?
Oh gosh, this is the billion trillion dollar question. Great question. Oh my gosh, we could just have the best conversation about this. So I'll do my best, and I don't necessarily believe that what I'm about to say is necessarily true. It's just a perspective, and fixed mindsets can actually be quite helpful. So in some occasions, we can be fixed on a particular goal, but we need to be able to have a growth mindset on how we get there. And to be really flexible as possible. But a growth mindset's really important, and other people in the world have called it a learn it all mindset, or and it is really, really important to be able to do that, because if we don't have that genuine openness, like you can feel it here, if you don't have this openness of going, okay, what do I need to learn next, and to have that, genuine curiosity and sense of wonder and awe about, well, what do I need to learn so I'm able to get through my next hurdle? What is it that is going to be useful to me? Sometimes we don't even need to have that mindset. We can just suddenly something will just come to us at that particular moment because we're more open to it. And then when it comes to, the language that you were just using with about the paradigm and how, we need to shift and what have you, having that mindset. And I've been so guilty sometimes of just being so deep in the weeds. For example, when I was writing my book, that's all I could think about. That's all I could do. I had to get that done. If anybody had said to me, Caroline, you need a growth mindset on this thing that wasn't important to me at that particular time because I was fixed on getting that done, I would have just said, look, I can't be distracted. I need to focus on this. I don't have time for it because I've got to get this baby shipped. It's a bit like a mother that is 9 months pregnant, and they know that at that term, a baby is going to be coming out. That's all they can pretty much think about. Nesting, focusing on getting the environment ready. There is this huge surge of energy by that. It's genetic. It's hormonal. There is this deep drive and instinct to be able to do that. So when we're working on a project, and it's almost like it's at the peak of Everest. And I'm not sure I like using the term Everest because, there's a lot of tragedy that happens on the top of that. But, you've got to reach that peak, by hook or by crook. somebody's saying, you need a growth mindset on this, when you just know that you've got to get every single sentence tight and, all of that kind of stuff, it's not particularly useful. So we have to choose what mode we need at that particular time. And this is what I was saying earlier, which is when we feel that frustration, that irritation, and my face is really scrunching up now because you can feel it metastasizes in us. And this is an emotional intelligence in itself, which is that you know yourself. And often a lot of people, when they feel that, they'll project that irritation on someone else, that something isn't right. Their dinner isn't right. Their world isn't right. The world is going wrong, whatever it is. We will blame external things, and that's the message for ourselves, that we're not learning, we're not curious, we're not building our own. We're not building ourselves in the right way that can give us our joy and our happiness. And that may sound really, what's the word I'm looking for? It may sound really luxurious, but when people say, well, I'm just looking for happiness, or I'm just looking to be happy, or I'm just looking for all of these things to make me happy, that's where we need to be able to stop and say, well, yeah, we all deserve to be happy, but what is it that you're doing in yourself to make yourself happy? And that's kind of introduces the whole paradigm shift that we're able to make or to explore. And what I'll add on that is that, yeah, you can hire a coach to be able to support you on that to be able to go to root around and play around with all of these different aspects. You can do a leadership circle or an emotional intelligence assessment to see where you are. But there's also this phenomenal technology that is free to everybody, or for $25 a month, ChatGPT, where you're able to explore very deeply. If you wanted to do a deep dive on it, you're able to do a deep dive on it, on the different environments that have made you stuck. The thinking, you can upload all of your thinking. If somebody journals, you could put it all in there, and say, okay, show me how I'm being fixed. Show me my fixed mindset here. Mm-hmm. Show me how in my past this has prevented me from getting to really where I want to get to. And you can do that kind of riffing really, really quickly. Mm-hmm. And what I would say with ChatGPT is ask for it to be provocative with you. Ask for it to give you the truth and not to do the, oh, this sounds like you're asking a really tough question here. Just get into the weeds because we kind of need it. We need to do this quick switch flipping, yes, really, really quickly for us to be able to feel like we're able to make sense of where we are right now, how we're able to move forward, because you just have to turn the news on and it can be such a depressant. Mm-hmm. And it can make us feel stuck, even more stuck, and make us feel hopeless to move forward. So making that choice as well is to be able to work on the things that you can change and be a part of, and to drive forward is pretty important.
I want to highlight firstly, like the very first thing that you said, which is that it's not really necessarily about like picking either like a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. It's really about, like, for example, for a project, as you were saying, you can have a fixed mindset about like the goal or the destination, but have a growth mindset to adapt throughout the journey. And then this, of course, relates a lot or fully to like to the topics in your book. So like reinventing companies and the culture in organizations for the changes of AI and the environment and society. And I want to dive into that in a minute. But then this second part that you mentioned, which you mentioned, like using technology or AI as a tool to like dive into your own mind, and for having that as a tool for growth and for introspection is really something very powerful. But it can be like very powerful in a way in which it contributes towards where you're going, or in a positive way, so to call it. But it also has like some challenges and implications in itself. Like I don't know, maybe hallucinations that lead AI to give you some wrong advice that if you don't think twice, you might just like take, and it might not be the right North Star for you, or it not be like a right guide.
Yeah, you need a lot of critical thinking, and that's a crucial part as well. And a lot of us will go. I'll give you my ex-husband's example. So he's such a great critical thinker. He's got a physics background, AI background, and a maths background. Genius. I think he's actually a genius. What he's done with a product in the back, it was just like genius for its time. And he's now retired. And I know he is so freaking smart. However, even with his level of critical thinking, you've still, because he's up there in whatever percentage, unless he. It's just such a great example. I hope he doesn't listen to this. Unless he is able to say, let's say he's using ChatGPT or he's using Grok, whichever, Claude, whatever. Unless you're able to say, what am I missing? What systems am I missing here that I need to contemplate and think and consider? You're going to get this, as people call it, the mirror effect, which is just going to tell you what you want it to hear. So you have to challenge the GPT to, and I know you know this, but the majority of people don't. So when I see AI, when people use AI to post stuff on LinkedIn, for example, and I can tell it's AI, because they haven't gone, and that they've just done a straight copy and paste and put it on there, and I'd go, oh boy, this is you're sharing a conversation that you have had with AI instead of being able to challenge the AI system with different aspects to get a really well-rounded system, which is why with my book I've tried. It's not going to be perfect, of course. It doesn't focus on all of the verticals simultaneously. It tries, so people can think from a systems perspective, but there is so much to deal with. Our brains are pretty much overwhelmed with all of the different challenges that are happening in all of these systems. So to come in with an emotional intelligence lens of curiosity, understanding our response to it, and instead of wanting to feel right and to be right, and then to feel that sense of pride and, well, everybody else is wrong. It's like, well, okay, how do I need to adapt that mindset to be able to adapt to the present mindset that is going to be most useful to me right now?
And again, talking about like mindset shifts that need to happen for people to be able to adapt to new circumstances. Like, first of all, the foundation for it all is to have like this capacity and willingness to like challenge what you're currently thinking, right? So that's like the starting point. But then like there are these different tools for assessing and going through that mindset transition process. One of them we've just talked about, which is like literally using technology, so AI. But then this works for mostly like any topic, any area, whether it's personal or like organizational or for a project or whatever. But then for more specific things that are happening in the world, those might need like extra methods, right, for like working through them. And specifically I'm talking about like societal changes and environmental changes. So like to start that conversation, I would like you to share what your perspective is on like these changes that are happening there, because like I mean with AI I think that it's very obvious for most people, right? It's like it's very obvious to see how AI is changing things, and it's a trending topic, so it's something that you hear about a lot. But then maybe in the environmental and societal level, is like you don't hear as much as in the AI space. So I would like you to like share your unique perspective on those two, and then also like maybe dive into some methods for organizations or people to be able to like transition through those changes that are happening like all around the world.
So it's a big question, and I'm gonna try I'm gonna tell you or share with you that where we are right now shouldn't be a surprise. We had ignored intellectuals back in the 60s and the 90s give us the guidance that we needed to become, and I'll just list it because I've actually got the list of authors in my book, and it's an entire suggested reading list for the Aftershock CEO, and you're able to access this on my website as well. It was just put up last week. So the suggested reading is that we had systems thinkers and ignored intellectuals. They saw all of this coming from the 60s. Okay. And why was it ignored? Capitalism. Basically. And people wanting to evolve and to, do well. I mean, it's just human nature is to do well, to eat well, to make money, to progress in some way. So the people that I called it the forebears who saw it coming. You've got Donella Meadows. She wrote Thinking in Systems, a primer. Gregory Bateson, Steps to an Ecology of Mind. Peter Senge, who is like the guy that made me realize about 12 years ago, which was, he wrote The Fifth Discipline, The Art and Practice of the Learning Organization, which is that organizations aren't learning organizations. They're focused very much on quarterly targets. And, what are they able to bring out that's really important, that is able to ensure that they're able to provide shareholder value. And you just gotta watch, or I've just downloaded Corey's new book, Shitification, to know that because businesses are essentially designed to show growth quarter on quarter, otherwise, shareholder value declines and there's less investment, etc. It means that products and services are essentially declining because of it's all about capitalism. And I realize I'm not exactly sounding like an intellect from at this point I've really dumbed it right down, because there's just no point trying to sound intellectual about this. And then there are other people, for example, Russell L. Ackoff, Redesigning the Future, a systems approach to societal problems. And then there's Claire W. Graves, Don Beck, and Christopher Gowan, who wrote Spiral Dynamics. So this is just out of the 105 books that I recommend CEOs read to understand why we're here, how we got here, and then how to move forward. It's all there. Instead, I've got the TLDR in my book, which is about 71,000 words, on the beginning, which is, how to change your where you are now, where you need to go, the realities right now, and then really the steps that a CEO is able to make in the first 100 days to this new reality. And it requires that internal shift. So, this is how we got here from a societal perspective. Is you just have to look back at the very first days of Christopher Columbus. It all started then. That's how we got here. How we move forward, the trajectory isn't going to change that much. But what we're able to do is create the change that we want to see in the world by understanding that we need to create a paradigm shift in our own minds so we're able to move forward. Because for the majority of people, and I don't think this is true of Gen Z necessarily, if everybody is like you, then oh my goodness, you are an entrepreneur, you educate yourself, you're creating apps, you're doing all of the different things and communicating to the world on how to be a better place, by creating your own podcast. If one of the things I love about Gen Z is, I mean, not all Gen Z, because we're not all the same. I can't put everybody in one particular, box, unfortunately. But, I do say in my book that I feel that Gen Z will be so profoundly important, because not only did they experience the pandemic, which would have set them back, but that would have been such a phenomenal reset. Because in a way, it didn't do well for a lot of people. There was a lot of mental health impacts, human suffering at that particular time. Not everybody was able to emerge from that period with the entrepreneurial learn-it-all mindset that you have, for example. But when I speak with you and I speak with other Gen Zers that are really driven, that are able to think about the systems from a vertical and horizontal perspective and try to do good things and to educate and communicate and to create products and services that are doing great things for people. Holy smokes. I mean, what an amazing time to be alive. And, and that's to support the societal downward trends that we see in the media, which is, the world is, the end of the world is nigh. There are lots of negative things happening in politics, the climate, all of these different aspects. But it takes great minds that are able to create applications that are able to solve some of the problems now. That's going to be, change the world. And I want to hear more about those people. And I think the world needs to hear more about these people. And if the news didn't just focus on all the negativity and actually threw a spotlight on the people that are making a huge, dramatic, positive change to the world, maybe we would all, find that those news stories to become quite infectious, and will help lift us up to do those things as well. But that doesn't happen enough. So the work you're doing and the work other Gen Zers are doing, which breaks the mold, is I think is going to be giving a lot of people a lot of hope.
I agree a lot with you on the fact that like a lot of Gen Zs, and I can see that, like, of course with some friends, but like really mostly through social media, that Gen Z has like a very unique advantage compared to other generations, which is that like right now, I mean, this is something that is talked about a lot, right? But like there are tools that exist that allow anyone to create anything, so it's really just about having the capacity to that creativity, and then that creativity and capacity to innovate, and from there like the enthusiasm and discipline to actually follow through with those projects using the tools that exist right now that maybe like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, people my age didn't have. Because it would have been much more difficult to have a platform like this and to be able to share ideas with this with other people, or create like a product or a service that is really positively impactful for society or for the environment, and like creating value and getting value. So getting revenue from creating things that are beneficial for the world and for individuals and for the society. So I agree with you on that part. And also I think that the pandemic has to do a lot with that development that we are seeing. Like really, it was my case that in the pandemic I started my first podcast. I started my first like business, which was first a book blog, like Book Thinkers, but then I turned into so I was basically copying everything that Book Thinkers were doing, and I was a lot in contact with Nick, so he was actually my mentor for that. So yeah, I mean. He is. Yeah, I always end up like coming back to what he does and like him as a role model or an example. But yeah, and I see like right now, for example, 5 years after the pandemic, that a lot of Gen Zs are starting like to take over these, not necessarily industries, but this niche areas of business or of like projects or initiatives that are beginning to become more and more relevant, right? So it's much more usual right now to hear about Gen Zs who are building an AI startup, which is helping, I know, something for development in developing countries, and so they got like 10 million in investment for their startup or things like that. So it's more and more common to hear things like that, and so it's also very easy to think that like this is the beginning of this new companies, these new organizations, and these new initiatives that will be the future. Because like as these things keep evolving, then like they will become the big companies that exist today. And so it's a good thing that many of these, not necessarily all of them, but that many of these are starting from like a standpoint which seeks to benefit like society and the individuals, not just necessarily like to have quick revenue or things like that. Because I mean, of course, things like that exist, and you can see that in people
we
who
need
are
revenue,
just
right?
Sure, yeah. I mean, yeah, it's something that we gotta face. That like, yeah, many people just might get into drop shipping because it's like the thing that works, and they get revenue. They don't necessarily make any positive impact, but like there are some people who do that. But then you also have more and more of these initiatives and more people who are doing things on the other side of the spectrum. And I think that also as we start to see the negative effects that like polluting the environment and like disproportionate distribution of income and the negative things that the negative effects that those things are having in society are now also visible, and so that leads a lot of Gen Zs and people to say like, okay, we need to do something right now because otherwise this will be life for the rest of our lives, so we need to start changing. So I think that like that synchronicity of those two things, of like having the possibility to create things and then also seeing that problems are starting to have actual negative effects, leads to people to create like podcasts like this, or apps, or like startups, or foundations, or like have this more pro environment and pro society initiatives. And with this, I want to go to another topic that I wanted to discuss with you, which is that you talk about, or actually your TEDx was about emotional intelligence in organizations, right? And again, these Gen Z founders, these Gen Z entrepreneurs and people who are starting things are not only thinking about the positive impact that they want to generate like outward, but rather as well like inward, right? Like within the organization. And so it's very important for these entrepreneurs and these Gen Zs to be able to like equip themselves with the tools to create the right kind of culture and the right kind of organization. So yeah, what's your like advice, if it could be called that way, for like young entrepreneurs who want to create this culture in their organizations that seeks like to benefit society and the environment, but also like to benefit themselves, and that can be like through emotional intelligence, positive relationships, things like that.
Great. So thanks for bringing that up. So back in 2019, when I did the TEDx talk, it really was almost like a warning to a lot to whomever was watching it on the TED website, to understand that or to help leaders understand that they needed to adapt and be prepared and to ready themselves on the shifts that are going to happen with regards to AI and climate, and basically how people were expecting organizations to show up in a different way because of the continuous cycle that was happening with regards to, the usual quarterly targets, and when they're not reached, there are layoffs and stuff like that. And at that time, it was more of a warning that organizations needed to become more emotionally intelligent, to experiment with AI, work out how you're going to be able to adapt with AI incoming. And this is well before the killer app of ChatGPT kind of changed everything for absolutely everyone, because it made AI accessible and useful, not just something that enabled you to have your Netflix recommendations come to you, or your bank to ensure that they're able to see whether or not you're credit worthy just by looking at your algorithm and of dependability and what have you, and what kind of risk you are. So it was coming, but nobody even then knew what it was going to look like. And still, we don't know exactly what it's going to look like in the next 5 years. So from an emotional intelligence perspective right now, and let's say there's a Gen Z CEO listening right now, or somebody that is at school still, and they're looking to work out how they can evolve, how they're able to move forward, or let's say somebody is looking to hire people, or they have people and they don't know how to evolve their people, and they're maybe feeling stuck. Going back to the earlier part of the conversation, they're feeling frustrated, they're feeling stuck, they don't know what is going on, despite having a very, very good, clear idea about where they want to go, which is, I think, better than what we all expected, or what maybe 30 years ago I knew what I didn't know. I didn't have that framework back then. We just had the fax machine back then, 30 years ago. Email was just coming in back then. We live in such a different world now, and it's a wonderful world. So anyway, I will say, in terms of Gen Zers, how Gen Zers can harness, if I can use that phrase, emotional intelligence. Feel the frustration that you have. What is the frustration? What is the yearning? What is the desire? Journal it, feel it, work out what it is that's going on, what you might want to do, that you might want to change. Also, do some, what I call in my book, radical listening. If you have a lot of people around you, in your company, let's say you have employees, might be 2 employees, might be 100, might be 1,000. Do what I call radical listening. I'm going to use Elon Musk as an example again. He did what people were not happy with when he joined Doge back in January of 25, which was that he sent an email out to the entire federal workforce to ask them what the top 5 things that they were doing that week. What are the 5 things you're doing? And the challenge there is that because the government wasn't an AI native organization, and he's used to working in an AI data oriented, skewed organization, he's used to asking very straight up, direct questions and getting the data so he can then, put it through an AI and work out where the opportunities are, where the flaws are, where the cracks are in the system, what needs to evolve. But the problem is that most leaders in a governmental organization aren't equipped. They weren't emotionally ready. They didn't understand the language. They weren't being partnered to deal with that kind of immediate requirement of data, nor did they appreciate, which is understandable, the threat, which is that they'd lose their jobs if they didn't have it by Monday. It's clearly Elon Musk did not have a coach at that particular time to do that. However, or a PR person to say, hey, let's work on this language, let's work on this positioning. He didn't have that. He was in commander-in-chief mode because he wanted to save I don't know how much. But nobody else was aligned with him. It was a huge catastrophe from a political perspective. The fallout was terrible. But let's use that example without the catastrophe, which is assuming that a Gen Z leader is also working with a lot of AI natives, because Gen Z are going to be are AI natives now. The AI, ChatGPT, Claude, etc., has been used and been highly accessible since 2022. Which means that they're expecting either organizations to be AI literate or to be exploring AI in a way that isn't just a quick solution, but that is going to be integrated in a very deep way. So assume all of that, or there's going to be an AI pioneer that is listening to this podcast, and they're starting something new. If that's the case, you've got to read the room and understand who your audience is, who your not customers, who are your employees, because they're your customers. You've got to make sure that you understand them, they understand you, and that together you're partnering up, which is, if you look at what went wrong with regards to Elon Musk and at Doge, he didn't partner with them. He didn't help them level up to his mode of thinking. Just wasn't able to. He just went straight in there and jumped right in, causing tidal waves and aftershocks, huge earthquake in the organization. But here, assuming that we use an emotionally intelligent approach, for your AI native listener or your explorer or your pioneer to think about who is it that's in the organization right now. Are they all on the same page? Are they able to understand that the data that you're possibly going to ask them for is going to be fed into a system to see how the operating system can actually be adapted, how it can grow, how it can be better for whatever greater good the original North Star is, not necessarily seen as a threat. And if everybody feels safe, and we've all heard of the term psychological safety. If people feel safe that the information is going to be used for that true North Star, which is to help and to help the organization become better, and to steer it in the right way, not because of somebody's ego, because it's like, well, we should be doing this shiny thing right here. But, so there has to be a lot of, the data has to be filtered in the right way. Once that's all understood, then you're going to create this really great environment that is going to be very fluid, fast-paced, adaptive, driven, etc., 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 to create the right things at the right time. And it's going to be some people call it jazz, some people call it resilience, some people call it adaptive thinking, some people call it a very fluid, highly resilient organization, because when you've got all of these environmental factors, such as the economy not doing very well, people not being able to buy the product necessarily, people being lonely, you've got the loneliness epidemic, we've got people that are concerned about the future of their career, and they don't know where things are going. When you've got all of these unstable environments around you, ensuring that you with your workforce, whether it's just you and a business partner or you and many, to create that cohesive environment, trusting environment where people can communicate, but to understand one's own frustrations at the same time, and to be able to communicate effectively without ego, without demands, is probably the greatest and most exhilarating challenge of any leader's time right now.
I think that you just provided a great introduction for anyone who has or is developing an AI-driven organization or organizational structure, on how to marriage that with an emotionally intelligent culture that puts people first, right? Not just the profit first, which is like how many companies have been, many or most companies have been operating like for many years. And as you were mentioning in like earlier in their conversation, how that has led to many of the problems that we are currently experiencing and living, right? I want to dive into two more things. So one is like a practical conclusion of the things that we have talked about, and I think that you can relate that a lot to the things in your book, but I will get into that in a minute. And I also want to get into an idea that I heard you were talking about with Nick in the Book Thinkers podcast, which is neuroplasticity, and how, I mean, you already mentioned that you were taking some courses in MIT, how you have been like approaching that, but yeah, I want to get into like the other thing first to be able like to wrap up that topic, and then we'll get into this other part. So yeah, how would you wrap things up in a practical and concise way for anyone who has been listening to this conversation that has been almost an hour long? So like, what is the practical takeaway that they should have in mind to actually implement these ideas into the inner transitions for adapting to the outer big transitions of AI, climate, and society?
It's all in chapter, I think it's, sorry, let me look at my book. It's chapter 15, which is where do you go from here, which is being a nervous system first, leadership in a dysregulated world. Once you understand your own triggers, this is what coaching is all about. Once you understand your own triggers, once you understand how you show up, what your internal operating system is, how it can sabotage you, how it can work to your benefit. Once you understand yourself in that particular way, and understand the paradigm that you've been operating in and the paradigm you need to move into to be successful, that is the beginning. That's the beginning of it all. And I, on my own podcast, Aftershock, Leadership in the Fifth Industrial Revolution, I just interviewed a woman who is side by side with me as nominated as a Thinkers 50 Leadership Award nominee. And I just interviewed her, and her book is called Higher Ground. And her book is absolutely outstanding because she is able to, she has outlined in her Harvard Press book how organizations need to show up for all of the different systems that we've just talked about, societal collapse, the environment, climate, and what have you, and how everything is shifting and how organizations need to be. And she said to me, which I thought was very generous, but I appreciated it nonetheless, which is people need to read my book first before they do that. Before they read her book, which I thought was a big deal, because she said one of the aspects that she didn't include in her book that actually, the leader has to do that inner work themselves. And all too often we jump in with that vision. If we go back to the beginning of this interview, and, I had my big North Star when I was young, but then it really crystallized straight after my TEDx talk in 2019, and then the pandemic and blah, blah, blah. I had to do a very long journey of years to get to the point where my book came out, and it happened. What I would have given to have had a coach, or to have had the mindset and the technology that we have now with ChatGPT, for example, to have fast-tracked myself, so I could have done that inner work. I mean, I've got a therapist, I've got a coach, I've got ChatGPT, I've got all of these different things that enables me to realize where I'm falling off and how I'm becoming dysregulated, or how I'm not listening to how I'm maybe going off course, or how I'm or how I'm going to the shiny thing that I shouldn't be doing. And we need to do that before and actually during all of the work. Otherwise, things unintentionally go wrong. We all have this big ego where we're like, we don't need that. Even I do, but we do. But we do. So that is my long form. I'm sorry it wasn't shorter, but that is my strong recommendation there.
And I mean, with that, we're also going back to one of the very first ideas we discussed, which is like actually having the capacity to have that self accountability and say like, no, I need a mindset shift here. I need to like actually revisit how I'm thinking about things and how I am like maybe as a leader, how I am leading and how I am leading myself to be able like to shift that part. And then that of course has to do with like the growth mindset and growth mindset with neuroplasticity. So yeah, let's go to that second and last topic that I want to cover, which is very fascinating to hear authors specifically, authors and like thinkers talk about the importance of really diving into like deep and difficult topics and learning them to be able to actually develop this capacity to think critically, right? So like, I mean, actually last week I posted a podcast with an engineer from ETH Zurich, and we were discussing there like the importance of learning to think and having the ability of critical thinking and developing that through STEM, right? Whether it's like through engineering or maths or whatever, it's like that is something that many people do. It's not necessarily the only way to do it, like through STEM. There are many people who do it in other ways. But like in your case with the MIT courses that you have, it was kind of STEM focused, right? So like, I want you to dive into like what your opinion is on the importance of developing this skill to think critically and how that experience has been for you with courses at MIT or with other difficult challenges that you have been pursuing.
So I only really understood neuroplasticity when there was a Rock and Schwartz paper on it when about 12 years ago when I discovered it, or when it was presented to me. And I remember thinking, I don't know what neuroplasticity is, whatever you're talking about, I have no idea. And there's also a book by Norman Doidge, which is called The Brain That Heals Itself. And I was always thinking that neuroplasticity is about healing. So you're able to walk again, after surgery, or you're able to, learn how to speak again after things that we take for granted, that we're able to practice and then get better. And the issue is that learning, and I mentioned earlier Peter Senge's book about learning, people often see learning as something that impacts their ego, instead of thinking, oh my gosh, I need a learn it all mindset, because then I'm able to think more critically. I'm able to think in different ways. And what happens is, and this is the part that is the unsexy part, which is that when you're learning something and it's really, really hard and you want to give up and your head is hurting and you're thinking to yourself, this is too much like hard work, and you want to leave it alone, you want to step away from it, going back to it to try and solve it and to create that outcome, to create the data or whatever it is that you need to be able to do, is where the magic happens. So one of the issues is with ChatGPT, for example, is that people are uploading their stuff onto ChatGPT. It spouts an answer. People copy paste it and put it into their university work, for example. And not only is it very obvious that to professors that this has been an AI slop, because there is no critical thinking associated with it, it actually prevents the person from doing that hard, painful, almost you get a headache from it type of work, to connect the dots so you are able to speak about it authentically in your own way. We're not all going to sound like Einstein. I'm not going to necessarily sound like other people that, you know, have written about things. We all have our own way of communicating, depending on our own neurodivergent minds, or neurotypical minds, whatever the situation is. So here, neuroplasticity is the meaning of life. When I say this is because if we don't do that hard thinking to try and connect the dots, when we're provided with a situation whereby we have to learn something and apply it to a real world scenario, it is hard work. We get a headache from it. We can burn out from it. It can be really, really difficult. But the rewards, the sparks we get in our brain when it happens, it's addictive. So that's why I learn as much as I can, because it's addictive. And next year, I'm hoping to be able to do MIT's space economy course certification, which is like
Space economy?
Space economy. So it's 40 hours of work. They say 20. For me, it's 40, because I have to do a deep dive in all of the different areas that they present to understand it, so that I can provide the weekly assignments that you're given. And you're not allowed to use ChatGPT or anything like that. You've got to do, and it's hard work. You feel the brain drain. You feel slightly fried, but it's just like if somebody does a workout in the gym and it's a hard workout and your body's feeling a little bit sore, but you're feeling energized. Exactly the same feeling, but here in the brain. So yeah, I'm addicted to this. So that's going to be the next course. I should have done it this year, but I had a book to finish instead.
What's the content of that course, of a space economy course? It sounds really interesting.
Well, I actually coach a few people that have created technology for space, and it's, if you look at what SpaceX does, if you look at what Jeff Bezos does, Virgin Enterprises, I think that's what it is for space, and also NASA, etc., and obviously the rest of the world is trying to create. And this is my version. This isn't necessarily going to be correct, but the opportunity, the next frontier, to sound a bit Star Trekky, is space. Also, there's, underwater. The new frontier is also, the world, because of population expansion and the challenges, the real world challenges that we have here. But the technology that is created to live in space, to work in space, to mine from space, is a whole new world, quite literally. So I'm just deeply fascinated. The first, when I worked at Virgin Interactive Entertainment back in 1992, one of the products that I worked on at that time was the space shuttle simulation. And it was a simulation that meant that you, on your computer, and it would have been a really old computer in 1992, before you were born, you were able to, move the buttons on this simulation on your computer at home, to basically do takeoff and then create all of these different, things, I don't know, putting satellites up or whatever in this simulation. It would have been very basic simulation, but then it would have been groundbreaking. And that was when I first realized I was fascinated with space. So again, it's just my past stalking me, and I have to fulfill it.
Yeah, sure. I mean, because it sounds really interesting and great. It's definitely something that I would like to get into sometime in the future. So, like, I think of my vision for my entrepreneurial path as like not necessarily conquering, but like going through different like industries and areas. So right now, as I shared with you, I'm like in the personal development and travel combination, but then maybe I will get into something related to quantum computing, or I don't know, like we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask because it sounded very interesting. And going back to what you were sharing about like getting into these mental challenges that like stretch your mind and that actually make you like really tired and exhausted. I remember that like in high school, it was mostly in my physics and maths classes that that happened to me a lot. But I enjoyed it because it was, as you were saying, like addictive. And I also had like great teachers, which really helped because I think that maybe if the topic is challenging but you don't have a great teacher, you might not be as engaged. But yeah, my teachers were very enthusiastic, and so that also like provided some energy, like to or enthusiasm, right? That inspired enthusiasm. And yeah, like right now at a university, that's happening to me with topics like technology, learning about like all kinds of technology, or also just like with microeconomics, for example. I had microeconomics in high school, but right now it's everything like much more math focused, and so I enjoy that a lot. And also like reading, for example. Sometimes when you are reading something and also maybe writing ideas as you keep reading, that happens. So I agree with that, and I hope that anyone listening keeps developing that habits and passion for like that type of learning, like really diving into things that make you feel exhausted and like you don't know anything. And then
It's so, and it's
yeah,
mind blowing. It's mind
it
blowing,
is,
and
yeah.
that is the greatest thing. The biggest organ in the body is supposed to be the brain, and you know, we being able to do something that enables us to learn and then apply it to something that we're doing right now, or something that can be built for the future. That's, to me, that's what life is about.
Sure. Well, it's been a great conversation. I appreciate your time a lot, and I appreciate you for coming. I want to ask 3 last questions that I usually ask all of my guests, and that's it. So
Okay.
it's like yeah, short questions. The first one is, what is a book, a movie, a music album, a blog, whatever that you have watched or consumed recently that you enjoyed?
I'm currently watching Star Trek Strange Worlds. It is so good. I am binging it hard. It is so, so good. It's just beautifully done. And it's taking me to different worlds in my mind.
Cool. Well, then the second thing, and you can relate this maybe to your book, to your work, to Star Trek, to your MIT courses, to anything. What is something that you have learned or discovered recently that you found like very valuable or interesting?
I wish I had an answer for you immediately. I'm really having to think through lots of different experiences right now that I have learned. Um, yes. Okay. So I just came across, and it was thanks to Nick actually, a brand new technology. And I immediately put into my mind immediately created the scenario of what that new technology will do and how it can impact the world. And I got very, very excited about it because it's the future of reading. And I can't really talk about it, but it completely, again, from a neuroplasticity perspective, it enabled me to think, okay, well, instead of reading in this particular way, as I have always read, even if it's on a device, this is transformative, and I am very much looking forward to this new technology coming out. But I can't say anything about it because it hasn't been announced yet.
Well, when you do, will you announce it on LinkedIn or on your socials or on any platform?
Well, no, I had a conversation with them because I'm hoping that my book will be on that platform.
Oh, cool. Great. Yeah, well, maybe then when your book's out there, then you can share that, and
I will. Thank you.
yeah, people listen can check your stuff. And then the last question is, so my podcast is called Coffee Lounge because I really just love coffee. I'm not sure if you're much of a coffee person, but if you are, or if you're just like coffee, like yeah, for as a morning thing or whatever, what is your favorite kind of coffee? That can be a specific coffee bean, a specific drink, whatever. And what is a situation or place in which you enjoy drinking coffee?
Well, I hate to break it to you, but I can't drink coffee. I fall asleep.
Oh,
So
Wait.
if I have a coffee, I fall asleep. And apparently this is an ADHD response. So I have ADHD. And what happens is if I have a coffee, I need to nap 30 minutes later. What it
Whoa.
does is that it spikes my brain, makes me think about 100 things all at once, and then I just have a crash.
You fall asleep.
So I can't do it. But I
Whoa.
love coffee. So I used to live with, back in the 90s, I had a flat share with an Italian, and she would make quadruple espressos because she's Italian. Oh, so good. And so and it was the little espresso pot and that to me was pure heaven. Just the process of making it, putting it together, cleaning it, putting it on the stove, hearing it, the percolating and the smell, and then having the special little cup for it, drinking it with lots and lots of sugar. Absolutely fantastic. I'm a huge coffee fan. It's just not a fan of me.
That's a shame, really, because I mean, if something like that happened to me, it would really be. I would need definitely to find like an alternative, because by this point I could not. Well, yeah, that's I mean, and with tea, the good thing is that you can also have like this experience where you're like preparing your tea. So like it's not just like grabbing a beer or whatever. It's like more and I mean. Even with beer, you can have like some experience, right? If it's like a special kind of beer, not just beer from the supermarket or anything, but like, yeah, I mean, it's good that you have like an alternative.
I know. I would be devastated if I couldn't drink tea. It's like I think you have that when you're born in England.
Yeah. Cool. Well, it was a great conversation. Is there anything else you would like to add, mention? Where can people find you? Maybe like anything?
People can find me at www.theforward.co, yes.co, and I'm on LinkedIn at Caroline Stokes. And I want to say this was a really lovely conversation, and I really wish you the very best with all of your endeavors. And I think I'm hoping that there's going to be a world full of people like you that are doing great things.
Cool. Well, thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for that, Caroline.